My name is Conrad Trow. I'm a certified journeyman farrier, and I currently live just outside of Louisville, Kentucky, in a little town called Goshen, Kentucky.
You know, the very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier Podcast.
Every horse, whatever it was doing, had a season. Once their competition season finished, they took the shoes off, they chucked it out in the field with some other horses, and it had a 2, maybe 3 months period where it went and remembered what being a horse was all about.
Even in a cheaper area, your prices should be set by your skill level, by your experience. And some people might not feel that they're worth, as much as others. But if you're only charging $160 to shoe a horse, then the only way you're making money is on your trims.
The WCB was a way to make sure that you kept the trade alive. I think I'm a custodian of the trade, so it's like we have to keep it going.
It was hard, but you adapt and overcome, and that probably gets to me where I am now. It's problem solving, horseshoeing's problem solving, and back in the day it was problem solving how to be as strong as the older apprentice is. So it's all about adapting and overcoming, which was good.
I know we learn every day, but you do have to put yourself outside the box and just continue to learn, which is why I was just trying to do my fellowship, because I still have apprentices, and if I stay at my AW, I'm stagnant.
Welcome, everyone. A little shopkeeping before we start. Once again, I have to say how humbled I am by how many folks have generously reached out and supported the podcast through our Purchasing a Coffee program. I would like to say a special thank you to Mark Hickox, who you will be familiar with as he was in a previous episode, and he is that very nice gentleman that you always see at all the farrier events in the Victory Race Plate booth. And I would also like to thank Daniel Bishop. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the podcast. So this following interview was done during my time at convention this year, which I think in the last episode I wrongly stated was in Texas. That was the year before. This year was in Arkansas. I was visiting with Cody Gregory in the trade show hall as everyone was getting their booths set up, and he introduced me to Conrad. Conrad was getting his Grand Circuit booth set up, and although he was in for a few busy days there at the convention, he agreed to sit down and do an interview. The next day after doing our interview, I ran into Conrad again in the trade show at his booth, and who else was there but another legend and former guest, Nigel Fennel. They were discussing the modifications that Conrad had already made to Grand Circuit's product line to make the shoes more farrier-friendly and usable in our day-to-day work, which you will hear later in the interview was part of Conrad's mission when he took over the company. It was kind of a surreal moment for me to stand there while these two legends of the industry discussed shoe shape and potential changes that Conrad could make even further to the product line. I learned a lot just standing there and observing that conversation. I wish I had had my mic on me. Anyway, as you will hear, Conrad is a very glass-half-full kind of guy, and his enthusiasm I found quite infectious. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
I have a wife. We've been married 8 years. We just have a nice little farm out in Goshen in a really little secluded area that has a really good big horse population.
Okay.
Still 80 miles away from Lexington. I only travel about 15 minutes from the house all day.
Really?
I'm pretty lucky. I call it just a little hidden gem in Kentucky. There's a lot of horseshoers in that area, but it's not a huge rat race like it is, I guess, in Lexington, where there's a lot of horses and a lot of horseshoers. So I've been really lucky for that area.
And then in that area, would that still be racehorses?
Yes, so my business is composed probably a third of racehorses. I do about 100 to 125 racehorses in a cycle, and about 200 to 250 show horses.
Okay.
In a cycle. So
quite the mix.
It is quite the mix, but I love doing a mix of horses because it keeps me in the game of all kinds, and I don't get stuck in one route, which I think makes, for me, I'm always looking for a constant change and basically a brain stimulation on.
Right.
If I'm not stuck in one, it just gets monotonous. So it works out really well for me. And when I started shoeing, that's the type of horses I worked on in South Africa. So
Were racehorses or both?
both.
Really?
So
Okay.
it's very similar to my business or the guy that I worked for in South Africa. The only difference is we did a lot of broodmare farms too, which I just began to hate because we just had to get through so many numbers, working out
Yeah.
in the field all day,
Yeah,
the
it's
heat,
not
the summer.
great.
It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, not many people, I don't think it is.
So we do the race horses, and then the show horses is basically majority eventers, some dressage, some show jumpers, but mostly mid to upper level, not super high. But it's people that don't travel a lot out of the state. A few that go to Florida for the winter, but most part everybody stays around home. So it's a consistent year-round business.
Okay. So would your people in the winter, do they pull shoes or anything like that? Or is it you pretty much going the
Our
whole time?
weather allows them to pretty much ride all year round. It still gets cold. We get some frozen ground, but we have a lot of indoor arenas
Right.
in our area. Nothing's heated, unfortunately. It allows them to ride. Some people might pull some hind shoes for a cycle or two, but as a part, everything stays in shoes. And
Okay.
the only thing I really change is move my schedule from 4 to 5 weeks to 6, maybe 7 weeks between intervals, just
because they
the
don't
growth.
grow.
That's it. So
Yeah.
it's pretty lucky.
Now, with the racehorses, are you able to stretch that schedule as well? Is there a
Yes.
season to it?
Yes.
Okay.
I do stretch them. They are always on 30 days, and I'll stretch them to 35 to 40 days.
Okay.
Because in the winter in Kentucky, there's not a lot of racing. Most of the racing moves south,
Right.
Louisiana, all the way through Florida. There's a little bit of racing at Turfway because they have the all-weather track, which is in Cincinnati. But they're not high-purse races. A lot of the lower-level racehorses that stay for the winter. But it's a lot of the young babies that are coming as 2-year-olds here in October, November, that get those 90 days. So they're ready for February, March when the horses come back to Kentucky for
Okay.
the racing season.
They're ready to join up.
Yes, and go into full training.
Okay. So you must run into the same issue that I've spoken to so many farriers about, where you have horses that are on 2 different sets of schedules. And then how do you work it out that you don't have those weeks where everything is crazy? The 30 days and the 5 weeks all coincide, and then they disperse again by the next cycle, and you have a lighter week.
About 10, 12 years ago, something clicked, and I figured a game plan out, and I was going to try it over the winter. So, for example, most of my horses are on 5 weeks. So when I stretch them to 6 weeks, I gain 1 day a week that I have no work. So I take Fridays off
Okay.
in the winter.
Right. Yeah.
So that works for the show horses. Now, my race horses, I always do on the same days.
Oh, right.
So that schedule never changes.
Right.
Race horses are always, Tuesdays is a full day of race horses, and Thursday afternoons.
Oh, okay.
So in my books, those days I've always penciled in for race horses, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
And then Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings are show horses.
Okay.
So when I get to the summer and I shorten my cycle, I need that extra day. That's what my Friday starts getting filled up.
Right.
So
okay.
I fill it up then.
Yeah.
That's how I got around it. I designated 1.5 days a week specifically just for race horses. So my show horses never fall on the same days that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yes. Or the short cycle horses fall on the same days every week, and the long cycle horses stay on their days.
Right.
Does
Yeah.
that makes sense?
Yeah. That does. Yeah.
So that's how I got around that. I made a mistake one year when I stretched my cycles. I noticed I had an extra day, so I thought, oh man, I'm losing work, so I added work. Well, when I got to the summer, I had nowhere to put them because I'd already filled that day. So
Right, yeah.
I learned the hard way there how to get that back in.
Yeah. Scheduling, I don't know if I could work it out that way or not, but I like your idea of like the dedicated days
Day.
because you know exactly.
Yes, so it doesn't matter if you're 5, 6, or 8 week. On that Tuesdays, I'm always doing racehorses.
Right.
I used to go to Churchill, but my trainers have moved out of Churchill for various reasons. So I have 2 training centers. One's 3 miles from the house and one's 5 miles from the house.
Oh, perfect.
So it's very simple.
Yeah.
I'm just very lucky I moved into that area about 10 years ago. and it just really cut down from my driving, where I used to drive 45 minutes every day to an area to shoe and then go home to it. And then I moved up into that area, and it really changed it.
Yeah, no
Especially
kidding.
with gas prices,
Oh,
diesel.
yeah.
I have an older truck, but I fill it up once every 7 to 10 days. That's it.
Wow.
I'm very lucky. I know most horseshoers aren't that lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in shoeing paradise.
It is. For me, it is. We always have problems with the weather, or like anybody, we get really humid in the summer, and then
Yeah.
the cold. When it does get cold in Kentucky, it's a wet, moist cold.
Yeah,
So
goes right through you.
it does.
Yep.
It does.
Did that take some getting used to coming from South Africa?
It was pretty tough. The heat and the humidity, not as much, but the cold was really tough on me. My cold weather working days, I have a set temperature, which I don't go out.
Really?
And I blame it on the horses not like being shod in those temperatures, but it's me.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't like to go out when it's about between 16 and 20 degrees in the winter.
Yeah.
I always move horses on those days. I don't like it, but in all reality, horses that have been out in the cold and their feet are frozen and cold, when you're nailing on, they feel it.
Yeah,
and
they definitely feel it more.
they do. And you coming from Toronto area, you know how they feel it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to have an account that was, or several accounts, 4 hours north of me, and those were some of the worst temperatures I'd ever worked in. That'd be like minus 40. I guess at that point, it's the same Fahrenheit or Celsius. And yeah.
It's just cold.
Yeah. And those horses were not happy with you.
They don't like it.
No, even the good ones.
Exactly. So I've just turned it into being something that I'm comfortable doing, and not just always trying to service everybody no matter what.
Yeah.
So that's been a big change. It's just part of, I think the older I got, the more I realized that not everything's an emergency.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you do fall into that trap when you first start out.
You do. And I've learned that if you start to train your clients, that you'll always be there at their beck and call.
They take advantage of it.
Totally. So if there's any advice I can give young guys, is set your parameters early when you start with clients so they know where you stand. Most of my clients will not text me on a weekend because they know they're not going to get a response.
Right. Yeah. You've trained that into them.
That's it. They'll text me, and I'll read. If that's a true emergency, I will take care of it. But
right. Like you said, yeah, probably 90% of them are not.
Very few horseshoe emergencies, really. Most of the time it's bad planning on their part.
Yes. Yep. You're right. And if they're stuck enough times, I think they do kind of learn to just sort it out themselves.
Exactly. If you give them a little bit of time, don't answer right away. Switch off the little mode if you have an iPhone that says red.
Yeah. Yep.
So they don't know you read their text. Switch that off.
Yep, you're not wrong. So I've run into quite a few farriers who do exactly the two very disciplines that you do.
Yes.
You must have to carry quite a bit of inventory because it's so different.
In a way, yes. I'm lucky enough we live close to a couple of supply stores, breeders. Farrier Supply in Lexington is really good. I've narrowed down the types of shoes I use on my horses.
Okay.
On my steel shoes, I use, most of my horses up front either get shod with the classic roller Kirkard or the DF fronts.
Right.
And then the Hans, I use a lot of DF selects, and then I use one style of race plate.
Right.
So
you don't have to carry so much.
And there is still quite a bit of inventory, but not a huge amount when you look at the truck. I have 2 drawers designated to race plates.
Okay.
And then my normal shoe pegs on the other side. And I've had the same truck body since 2004, and I'm still running a 2007 truck. So
yeah,
I just do a weekly order of what I need. So I'm lucky enough that it's close to anybody that I need it. I don't think it's a lot of stock when I look at other people's trucks, but it might be.
I am a sucker for, trying the next new thing, and then it like shoe wise.
Yes.
And then, you end up with a whole bunch of different makes and models. And
there's nothing wrong with that. I think, and that's what I did to find what shoes I liked, because I used to hand make everything at the horse.
Did you?
Yeah. Through the 2006 through 2010, 11, I handmade every shoe at the horse.
Wow.
And then just, I couldn't keep up. You get tired, you get older, and you get wiser. So I did go through that of trying different types of keg shoes, which worked and which worked for me and the type of horses that I shoe. And then we had the whole synthetic footing come in. So you had to be find out what shoes worked appropriately for your horses.
Right.
And that's what caused me, that's one of the reasons that caused me to change from putting concave on everything to changing to a 3/4 fullet style shoe. Because of synthetic footing, and
Yeah, there was just too much grip.
it's too much. It's just too much. And, I was getting feedback from the clients that their horses were disconnected or not moving as well or forging a lot when they never did until they got the footing. And it's been a big learning curve, I think, for a lot of people.
Oh,
the
yeah.
synthetic.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of injuries and stuff started to happen, and we all had to adapt.
We took a lot of injuries away, but we added a whole different thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can see it in the racehorse world. They all went to synthetic, and now they're moving away from it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the tracks. Keeneland went to a poly track, and then they went back to dirt.
Right.
So
We had the same thing back home, too.
yep.
Yeah.
So what courses near you? Woodbine?
Yeah. I'm only probably an hour and a bit away from Woodbine.
Okay, yeah, we have quite a few of my clients will send horses up there to race up at Woodbine, yes.
Oh, okay. Man, to earn those Canadian dollars.
They'll do anything they can to get a win on these horses and
Right, yeah.
get them done. A lot go up to Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess you got to go where you got to go.
exactly. Because a lot of the purses have gone up so much at Churchill and at Keeneland that it's attracted a lot more bigger
Right.
race horses and race names.
So
So
it's tough to compete
tougher.
with that.
So a lot of the small race outfits and one-man shows have to travel a lot more, go to the smaller tracks to be competitive with their type of horse.
Right, yeah. Well, I guess we should start with how you ended up in North America.
So it was a crazy ride to get to this point, which I'd never thought I'd get there. So going through high school, I grew up in South Africa, born there. I was born in the Northern Cape, which was very desert, semi-desert, in an area called the Kalahari Desert.
Okay.
My dad worked for a guy that owned a huge farm and ran a lot of cattle, and my mom was a riding instructor. And so I kind of fell into riding horses and kind of grew into playing a lot of polo. So at about 9, I started playing polo, and I played it all the way through high school. I shod my own horses here and there with what I thought was right, and it looked good. And my goals in life, I was going to become a veterinarian.
Oh, okay.
So I'd applied to the big veterinary college in South Africa called Onderstepoort, which is recognized as one of the better veterinary colleges around the world, and it has some great research, and that was my goal. I was going to be a veterinarian and probably specialize in horses, and I applied, and I hadn't even heard back yet, and I graduated high school, and I thought, you know what, while I'm waiting for all this to happen, I've always wanted to come to the U.S. and play polo and do that. So I came over here and went to Myrtle Beach and played down in Myrtle Beach because there's always South African guys coming over, so you get to know people and you come over here. And I played for the winter series coming into the March time. And then I thought, you know what? I've got a little bit of time. I'm going to travel around the U.S. and decided to go to horseshoeing school. That'll be great. I'm going to go to horseshoeing school because that'll help me being a vet. I'll understand it.
Right, yeah.
So I opened up the Horseman's magazine and I looked at all the horseshoeing schools, and I saw one in Kentucky with Mitch, and around the world, as Kentucky's known, it's a horse capital. Why not go to school there? That's where all the horses are. There wasn't a lot of research and thought put into it, I'll be honest. But it turned out being, best 3 months for education. It was great. It was 3 months at the old school in a little town called Mount Eden, an old school building that Mitch had turned into a horseshoeing school.
Okay.
The accommodations were somewhat desirable, but he put on a great school. And I learned a bunch. In 3 months, I didn't realize how much. And in my last couple of weeks, I called my parents and I told them, you know what, I want to become a horseshoe. I don't want to go to vet school. And the big driving force behind that was I hated school.
Okay.
Sitting in class, doing school. It just wasn't my style.
And there would have been a lot of that ahead of you.
Exactly. Another 5, 6, 7 years, basically, of doing that. And, the cost, and it just didn't look that inviting now that I just didn't realize how much I'd love shoeing horses and working with your hands. So my parents were okay with it. So then I started looking around. There was a guy in our area that was looking for an apprentice. So I applied for the apprentice position while I was still here, finishing school. And I got the job. So I graduated in June. I started the April, May, June, end of June. and I started with him in July, and his name was Andrew Tim. I didn't realize how good he was, but he was one of the leading horseshoers in the KwaZulu-Natal area, which is Durban, just outside of Durban. That's the province, and which was the East Coast, very much like Kentucky. Thoroughbred racing, stud farms, a lot of eventing.
Okay.
So it's a huge,
Very
it's the
similar area.
Kentucky of South Africa.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I moved in there and I worked for him for 4 years, and it was just great. We did a lot of horses. It was a numbers game. He had 4 guys that worked, including himself, and with all the broodmare trims, the race horses, we're doing about 2,500 horses a cycle.
Holy. Yeah.
So it was nothing to come into a stud farm and trim 250 broodmares and babies in a day.
Wow.
So, and the average day for shoeing would be 30 to 35 full sets. He had a huge practice, and I didn't know any different. I just thought that's
what you did. Yeah.
that's what you did, and we worked 5.5 days a week. He believed in getting up and driving in the dark and getting there as the sun came up at the first stop and leaving the last stop when the sun went down. Driving the dark.
Wow.
And the sun, saying that, the sun normally came up around about 6:30 to 7 in South Africa in the summer and winter, and goes down about between 5 and 6:30 year round. So it's not like here it stays light till 9 in the summer. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, we didn't work those longer days.
Right.
But it was an amazing experience working for somebody like him. I think the big part of it is that people never realize is the number of horses you can get under is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
There is no shortcut. There is no easy way to becoming. You have to pay your dues. It's invaluable, that type of experience.
Yeah. And to have, like, you basically got the number of horses people will see over a much longer span of time.
Exactly. And yes, it did take its toll on my body a little bit, but it set me up. You don't realize these things till now, that how much it set you up for that next step and not being scared to work. And, he taught me how to run a business. You're always involved in it. He was there every day and working. And, you started off by the guy that pulled the shoes and cleaned frogs and soles. And you just worked your way up to a position that you were shoeing and nailing. And, we'd have 7 horses being held, and there were 4 of us, and we were working on all 7 at a time.
Wow.
At some point, somebody was doing something. It was an assembly line, but his one thing that he never wavered on was the quality. And every single horse, he checked the trim and the fit and the finish. Never did I see him just let it go. He checked it. Even when we went into stud farms or yearlings, he would always check all the horses.
Okay.
He was that crazy about quality control. Sometimes it seemed a little bit over, but it didn't.
Yeah,
it's not. Now that I'm a boss of other guys, you understand it.
Yeah. Well, it's your name that's
Exactly.
basically signed on those
And,
feet.
we stayed on, he had apartments on his farm. He provided housing. When you got home from work, his wife cooked us all dinner, and then we went to bed, and, he had somebody, so we didn't have to worry about those type of things for the long day. So he did take care of us very well.
Oh, cool.
It was a great experience. And then by 99, when my 4-year apprenticeship was coming to an end, he offered me a job to stay on as a more permanent role, partner, or I don't know what the right term was, but also encouraged me to possibly look elsewhere because the economy and the state of South Africa was going pretty bad.
Oh, okay.
The exchange rate, when I came to school in the U.S., exchange rate was around about 3 to 4 to 1. 3 to 4 rand to $1.
Okay.
By the time I came back to the U.S. in 99, it was 10 to 1. The safety, everything in the country had gone. It was really unsafe.
Okay.
So I called up Mitch at the horseshoeing school, and I asked him, I said, do you know anybody looking for an apprentice? Because I was willing to take another apprentice job just to get out of there. And it happened that he had just lost one of his instructors at the school and said I could come over there. And that was an easier way to get a visa, being a teacher, coming into a teaching position than just coming to work.
Yeah.
So I signed on for that to work for Mitch. July of 99, I flew back here, and I had everything with me in my 2 suitcases. Everything I owned was in those suitcases and a couple of $1,000, and I'd sold everything back home. I'd made my mind up that I was moving.
This is your thing. Yeah.
Yes, I was moving come hell or high water, and the next 2 years were really fun. I learned how to teach people and convey it, which helped me in how to give clinics.
Right.
So there's another step that you don't realize it until you actually see it happening.
Yeah.
And Mitch put me around, and it was tough. It wasn't easy working at the horseshoeing school. There had a lot of ups and downs, and it's like anywhere.
Yeah.
But he taught me how to teach, and also put me around so many good horseshoers. Every year from that same year, 99, all the way till 2003, when I was working with him part-time, he had so many different clinicians. The American Farriers team, Jason Hill, Craig, Mark Mills, Jim Quick, all those guys. And he always had people like Jim Paul, Shane Carter, Bob Marshall, Grant Moon, all different types of clinicians coming through the school. And working at the school, I got to interact with them one-on-one. And when you were young, and these guys are superstars, the Billy Carruthers, all those guys it was amazing.
No kidding.
Well, they would always come in a day or two early, and you always got to do semi-private clinics. So I learned a lot. That got me set up to do the draft class with Craig, which we won 4 years in a row here at the convention.
Right.
Which was another great learning experience, which was invaluable. You just can't bypass how important hard work and just engulfing yourself into it.
Yeah. No kidding. The competitive stuff, is that something that you then took on from there?
Yes, so when I saw that in 99, when I got to Mitch's in July, my first contest was in Findlay, Ohio. That October was my first contest. Bob Marshall was the judge.
Oh, cool.
So I went up to that. I was lucky enough to do well enough to win, and I was addicted to that. And that was where it started. And, I had the horseshoeing school. I had access to as much time as I wanted to practice as much steel. I had that access where it was unlimited, where some guys, if they by themselves, the cost of that gets to you and you can't do it. I was lucky to have it with Mitch. Coke, propane, steel, practice as much as you want.
Right.
So I could do that.
Yeah.
That's what got me into it. And then I knew that if I wanted to get anywhere, I was looking at all these other horseshoers. They were all successful, but they all competed.
Right.
They all were certified and journeyman. So those were my goals. So I got certified and passed my journeyman that first year in 2000.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And then I just went to my first convention. I competed at the Ontario Convention in California. That was my first convention in 2000.
Oh, okay.
So I got in that, and that was intimidating as anything because you have Shane Carter next to you, Jason Smith, Craig, all those guys that are just icons of the industry.
Right.
Right there competing with you.
Yeah.
And from then it was just hooked, and then Calgary and doing all that. And then your next goal is you want to make the team. You want to make the AFT team.
Mm-hmm.
That's the pinnacle of competing. You want to reach that. And it's just always goals. I just had that competitive nature that
just kept you striving for different ones.
I just didn't like just staying stagnant.
Yeah.
And where you are. So that was my next goal. And what kept me off that goal for a couple of years was not having my permanent resident card.
Oh.
Which was an ongoing battle with immigration.
Yeah.
Changing status from a teacher. I had to go through 3 or 4 different statuses before I got my permanent resident in 2006.
Holy man.
And it cost approximately about $20,000 to get it done.
Yep.
But I got it done, and I did it for me the right way. I didn't do anything that I didn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lot of hoops and jumps, and what made it tougher was 9/11.
Oh.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
In 2001. So that made it a little tougher to get it, but we got it through. So in 2003, Craig and I competed at the convention. We won the draft, and I'd done well all those years. And what really hurt was I had enough points to be on the team.
Oh.
All the way from 3 through 6.
So was it that you had to be a permanent resident to qualify for the team?
Yes, that was a stipulation. Then just changed it in 2002 because they had some issues with another team member who was Canadian and then was on the U.S. team, and they had some passport issues.
Yeah.
So they said, we're going to eliminate this.
Darn Canadians, they just ruin it for everybody.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
We got it fixed up, but I learned a bunch just competing and pushing, but I knew I was going to get there. So in 2007, I was lucky enough to make the team.
Yeah.
With Bill Poore, Travis Coons, Billy Reed, and Todd Walker.
Oh, wow.
So we had a great team. We went up to Calgary. Bill Poore won the World Championship that year. We as a team won the draft World Championship. So that was one of the best years competing that I'd ever have. The camaraderie we built, we had a great team. Went to England. I think we came in third in England.
Oh, wow.
Had a great time. It was another stepping stone to learning a lot more.
No kidding. Yeah, you get in a group of people like that, you're all training together, and
we were all the same age. We were all like-minded.
Yeah.
We had the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. And we had a fun team.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It was. 2008 came around and had a horse that hurt my elbow, so I had to have Tommy John surgery on my left elbow.
Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, so that's the same as what baseball pitchers get.
Oh, right.
On the inside, they all know when the ligament tears off the bone.
Yep.
So that kind of set me back. So I took that year off, and then I kind of enjoyed being off a little bit. And then I slowly got back into competing, but life was taking me a different direction at that point.
Again, yeah.
I'd competed hard for 10 years. And the expense of it was, I was on that bubble of, I have to make a decision. I have to shoe horses and make a living and think about my future.
Right.
Or do I keep going this way? So I try to play both sides of the fence, but my shoeing career was really taking off. It had been good, but the area, I'd moved into a different class of horses, better paying. My whole family my dad had always worked for somebody, and he provided us a great life. Life was great, but I'd always wanted to be
your own
own my own place,
my
own boss, be totally financially secure. So I decided to take that route and focus on my shoeing career and still compete, do clinics, but I wasn't sacrificing the time to be super competitive.
Right.
Because I wanted to focus on other things. I don't regret it all. It's just a decision I had to make. And
yeah, it's tough when you can't do it all.
You can't, but you have to make that decision because I realized as a horseshoer at that time, 33, 34, that injury made me realize that I'm not going to be able to shoe forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You think you're invincible.
Until you're not.
Exactly. So I put a lot of focus on growing my business, putting money away for something.
Right. You still didn't know what that was.
I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. Things went well. Bought a house, grew the house. Everything was going good. Life was good. And then decided to, I met my wife, Crosby. She and I got married in 2014. So we dated for a while, and she was actually one of my clients via a vet. She'd always had a horse shod by somebody else, and this horse needed some glue on shoes, and their horseshoer didn't do it, so they asked me to do it. And the same barn that I shod. So that's how I got to meet her. She helped me realize just looking at different things in life. We travel a lot. She's great. So years went by. We bought the farm. Things were really good. Have apprentices. And then I was shoeing a lot of racehorses, and I figured, man, I need to design a little shoe that I can use. Because I use a lot of Z-bars and bar shoes on my racehorses, where a lot of guys don't, for various problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I called a friend of mine, Austin Edens. He has some CNC machines.
Yep.
I said, hey, if I design the shoe, can you make it? And he said, sure. And we worked backwards and forwards, and he and I got together and actually worked together on these projects. And we started making some of these shoes for me, and people liked them, so we decided to make them a little bit more, sell them. And that's grown pretty well, but we couldn't keep up. He was making a lot of tools. With all the stuff, his name recognition, his tool quality, his attention to detail is just amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody better out there that has that kind of attention to detail, and there's nothing that gets by him. And he helped me design these shoes to what they are. Those are his brains. I gave him what I was looking for on the Titan brand of horseshoes that I came out with, which they're not a huge brand, but they got me going in this direction where I'm going right now. We couldn't keep up. So in Louisville, Grand Circuit Products, the Blooms were running it.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Steve Bloom and his wife, Jan.
Okay, yeah.
Steve passed away, and Jan was running it, and I didn't realize they were in Louisville till somebody told me. And they'd been in my doorstep for 15 years. So I went over there to their facility, and I said, can you guys make these shoes? And for the last 2 or 3 years, they've been making these shoes. Suddenly, Jan passed away last year. So she'd been ill, some COVID problems, but also some other health issues. And the family came to me and asked me if I was interested in buying the company.
Oh, okay.
So this is where that rainy day money came in.
Yeah. the thing you've been saving for, but you didn't know who you were.
Thought it was retirement my whole time. Like I was just going to have some money in the bank and retire.
Right.
So there it is. And that took a couple of months to work it out. In April this year, we closed on buying Grand Circuit products.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's been a great journey to this point.
No kidding.
People say it's the American dream, but it truly is to me something that I can come. Yes, I came with some money and some suitcases, but I still have a full-time shoeing business. And now we own a manufacturing business.
Yeah.
I've never owned a business like that. It's all new to me, but it's in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and you already have the contacts and
Yes. And, I've come in with a game plan of making these therapeutic shoes. Even as a horseshoer, I hated a lot of these therapeutic shoes because the mechanics were good, but they didn't work for putting on feet.
the application of
It
them
was
and
terrible.
stuff.
So I'm trying to make all our horseshoes horseshoer-friendly that I feel comfortable nailing on.
Yeah. Right.
I don't feel comfortable nailing on. I can't ask you or somebody else to nail them on.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to bring a different perspective to that. And
awesome.
I'm not a salesperson. That's been the hardest thing for me to try and do is to try and sell something.
Yeah. No kidding.
So I have to learn. I just don't know how to do it.
But you clearly like talking with people, and I think that's the biggest part of it is just getting in front of people and just talking.
I love doing it. Just meeting people like yesterday at the trade show, just getting in there, being able to talk, communicate.
Yeah.
People I've never met. It's been great. I love it. So it's a great journey, and it's my goal now. It's my exit strategy from daily grind, having to shoe so many every day, to slowly cutting back on that, but still shoeing and loving shoeing.
So that you can,
Because
do what you love.
it was getting to a point that I was getting sour on shoeing.
Yeah.
Because it is a daily grind. Your body's taking a beating. And I did skip over a part that last year I did have an injury and I had a hip replacement in March.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yes, a total hip replacement. And it's not arthritis based. It's just a horse came down on me and popped my hip and tore the labrum. And that made me realize that happened just before Grand Circuit came available. So it's all about timing.
Yeah, no kidding.
And listening and paying attention to what the signs are. And, I'm 45. It's still young, but as a horseshoer, it's not. Your body's telling you.
Yeah.
You can't keep doing this till you're 65 like most guys and still keep that same pace.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do see some of those guys who maybe they didn't plan ahead very well financially. They're working into their 60s, but they're grinding it out. Like, it's not that they're tapering back. They have to keep doing the same numbers they did when they were 30 just to get by, and they are miserable.
Exactly. And I've been to every convention since 2000 except for Portland, because that's when I had my elbow surgery the week before that. And I walk around and I look at these horseshoers, and my wife helped me see this. My wife is, she's a triplet, but she's one of the smartest people I ever met. Not just because she's my wife. She has 3 different degrees, 2 masters and a postmaster's.
Oh, jeez.
In law and criminal justice, psychology, and she's a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
But she doesn't do a lot of that. She'd rather teach people how to ride horses, and she's a great riding instructor.
Right. Well,
she helped me look at these things, and she came to our first convention with me. I think it was Reno, the first time we were out in Reno. And she said, "Baby, I'm worried about you." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I don't want you to be 65 and walking like some of these guys and having to work. I want us to enjoy our retirement years together.
Yeah.
We can enjoy it."
Yeah.
It's resonated with me that these young guys, I'd love to be able to tell them not to think about that future. And you have to do your grind work, do as much as you can in your 20s and learning, but put that $100 a month away somewhere.
Yeah. That you can't touch it. Yeah.
Yes, that you can't touch it, because you're going to need it down the road, right? You're going to need it.
Yeah.
It's so important.
And it's hard to get yourself in that mindset when you have so much money flowing through you.
Yes.
Like, it's easy to forget that a lot of it is going back out the other end because you're paying for everything. But
I see it so much. Horseshoers are terrible businessmen.
we are. Yeah.
And I've been lucky. I've surrounded myself with some really smart people financially outside of horseshoeing that have helped me. Since I moved here to the US, I met a guy that's one of my clients' husbands. He's a financial advisor. He works for New York Life.
Okay.
And one day we were talking in the barn. I was 23. He said, you need to be putting some money away. And I sat down with him, and I've been putting money away ever since then. Every month it just comes out, and we've increased it every year and every year. And, at 55, I have the ability to stop shoeing
Yeah.
because he got me doing it. I wouldn't have done it by myself.
Yeah.
He was an older guy, and I paid attention to these people around me, just like I did the horseshoeing guys. And it paid off recently when I was able to buy Grand Circuit and going forward, and it's been good. So I think that's some of the most important stuff that I want to be able to pass on to the younger guys is you have to think financially. You have to.
Yeah.
We're not able to work like a banker or a lot of these guys that sit behind a desk till they're 65 and still look good.
Right. Yeah.
And go to the gym and do those things that we can't do as horseshoers.
No, you see it like you said, in the trade hall.
You do. It's sad.
Yep. There's a lot of guys with canes.
Yes. And then you see these young guys, yes, the money comes in good. Horseshoeing, there's very few professions you can see that money coming in like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes out the other end, just as you said, so fast. And you don't need to be buying a new truck every 2 years because for tax reasons.
Mm-hmm. No, that whole write-off thing is the worst concept.
It is. It doesn't make any financial sense.
No.
It doesn't. My truck's a 2007. It's been paid off since 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's in the every year I've made a point. Every year at the convention, I drop it off at the mechanic for a week, and they service it top to bottom. They do everything. He called me yesterday. He said, we needed to change the oil, and we put 2 tie rods in. That's all it needs. It has 370,000 miles on it.
That's not a bad repair bill then.
No, it's not, but that truck doesn't cost me anything. It's paid for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it did do a transmission tomorrow, I would probably go and find another used truck that I can pay cash for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not take on a payment.
Exactly. And yes, it is nice to have new things. Maybe I'm just old school, but I have an old Toyota Land Cruiser that I bought used. I bought it used. It had 180,000 miles on it. That's my other car. Yes, it is nice to have nice, new, shiny things, but
yeah, there's a cost.
There's a huge cost in your future. When you get down the road, you have to look at that. Taking care of your body because I didn't believe guys when they said, you'll feel the changes when you get 40, 45.
Mm-hmm.
And I do.
Yeah.
It's harder to get out of bed, harder to do those things.
Yeah, and you're not the first person to say that. Most people, when I talk to, it seems to be after 40, it just, something happens.
It's something happens, and yes, we still shoot 10 to 15 horses a day in my practice. Yes, I have two apprentices that help me. I have one journeyman guy and one certified guy. And yes, they make life a lot easier for me. And that's one thing that I would always recommend guys doing, having somebody to work with you. A, it's safer.
Mm-hmm.
B, it keeps you better because you having people watching you all the time. So it keeps you on your game. You don't get lazy. You don't get complacent.
Yep, exactly.
And always try and hire people that want to get educated, get better. I have stipulations. If you want to come work for me, you must have gone to horseshoeing school. I don't care which horseshoeing school.
Right.
I will not hire a self-taught horseshoer because it doesn't show me that you want it, you know what it takes. Or somebody who's aspiring to be a horseshoer. I'll let you ride in the truck a couple of days, but it's just one of my rules. And my guys that work for me, I'll start them off at a certain rate when they start. But they will only get a pay increase when they pass their certified or when they pass their journeyman.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have a similar kind of setup. You can invest so much in somebody if you're training them right from scratch and they haven't shown the commitment of putting out money and time and everything to go to school. So it's easy come, easy go for them I've made that mistake several times.
Yes, exactly. And, I require them to stay for 2 years because it takes me a year to get them to where I want them. And then the year where they really start to learn how to shoe horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some guys blame me for being too slow. But some guys, they get a yard, he's there 2 weeks and he's already nailing on shoes. But to me, that's a shortcut. The way I was taught, the first year, I was just trimming. I didn't get to shape. Only by year 3 was I nailing on.
Yeah.
So I tried, and I see what it did for me. And certain guys progress faster than others when you get a lot of apprentices. You've seen that. So they dictate their own speed and what they want to do. When you have somebody there all the time with you, and like now, I have the journeyman guy and the certified. When I'm gone, they can take care of things at home.
Mm-hmm.
When my hip was out, I was out for 2.5, 3 months. My clients were very confident with them. They let them shoe the horses, and when I came back, the horses looked like I'd been shoeing them, which was great for me because I felt like I'd done my job with them.
Yeah, no kidding.
This December, the journeyman guy is moving along to run his own practice, and he's been with me nearly 3 years. So it's time. It's sad, and I have to train somebody else, but I have somebody coming, so it's just that next step that I have to do.
Yep.
I love it. I love teaching to a point where teaching people that want to learn.
Yeah.
It's so important. You must want it.
A huge prerequisite that otherwise it gets really frustrating.
It does. And you spend more time with these guys than you do your family a lot of times.
Yeah. So you have to be of like mind, don't you?
You have to. You have to be able to get along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. So what's your favorite book?
Recently, I've had a couple, but there's an author that comes out of South Africa.
Wilbur Smith.
Wilbur Smith.
Yep, my mom reads him.
I've read all of his books, and my favorite one is When the Lion Feeds.
Okay. Yep. That's one of his older ones.
Yeah, that's that's his first book.
It is. Okay. Oh, he got it right off the bat.
Yes,
for you.
and I've read all his books. His newer ones are good, but I prefer the older ones.
Okay. Favorite brand of nails?
Liberty.
What shoe sizes do you generally have to stock the most of? I imagine this will be 2 different answers.
In the race horses, 5s and 6s. In the show horses, 1s and 2s.
Okay. Favorite make of rasp?
Growing up, it was a safe edge forever. Right now, it's probably the Heller Green Tang.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty common answer.
Yes.
Do you have a dream farrier rig?
I'm pretty happy with the one I have.
I
I've modified
suspected
it.
you were going to say that.
Yeah, I've modified it because when I first built it, it was built for hand making shoes. I didn't have any shoe rack. And I've been back to Brent 3 or 4 times and modified it as my practice has changed. If I had to redo it again, I probably wouldn't do it any different.
Okay.
It is a box with the doors.
Perfect. Okay. Favorite rounding hammer?
A Justin. I've had the same hammer since 2000. Craig Trinker gave it to me at my first Calgary in 2000. I was swinging an original Jim Paul pound and 3/4.
Yeah.
And he told me I was having to work too hard, and he took one out of his box, which was at that stage, at Calgary, and he gave me a Justin rounding hammer.
Yeah.
And I still use the same hammer to this day.
Oh, wow. That's saying a lot when he give it to you out of his kit, like there, right? What's your favorite type of bar stock to work with?
I do love working concave.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Do you miss it when you...
Yes, I do. I do miss not being able to put it on. I just think it's lovely to work. It's easy to work. It looks so good on a horse's foot.
Yeah.
It looks very good on a horse's foot.
Favorite pastime after work?
Duck hunting.
Oh, really?
Yes. And working my dogs. It goes 2 and 2. I do a lot of field trials and duck hunting with my yellow lab.
Oh, cool. Okay. And does your yellow lab come to work with you too?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you have a farrier terrier too?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. What's the next thing on your bucket list?
I think a lot of traveling with my wife. That's my next goal because, I've just purchased Grand Circuit, so that's a big goal right now to get that into. I want to make that a premier manufacturing company in the U.S., not just with the aluminum shoes, but I'm looking into a lot of other
Oh,
things.
okay. Yeah.
Because I'm very big on making things in the U.S. for the U.S.
Right.
That's very big for me. Even though I'm not born in this country, I've lived here half my life now.
Right. Yeah.
And it has given me so much that it feels like home. It is home.
Yeah. That's cool. Favorite brand of keg shoe?
Kirkart.
Ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
Ideal?
Yeah.
4.
It's a fairly common answer. Favorite anvil?
I've used a Colesfar my whole life.
Oh, yeah?
I've had the same Colesfar. If you come to my booth, I found a 75-pounder that I just bought my 7-year-old nephew for his birthday, and I gave it to him this week, and he's here.
Oh, really?
So it has to be a Colesfar. It's one I've used the most.
Yeah. It's a testament how long you've had it. They seem to, I guess they don't make them anymore.
No, they don't.
I didn't know that. Somebody just said that last week. If you're stumped on a case or need backup, who would you call?
There are a couple of people I'd call. Depending on the type of case, if it was more veterinary or if it was more shoeing-wise, Austin Edens would be one.
Yeah.
If it was more podiatry, Dr. Scott Morrison.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll use different resources. It's like I use different vets depending on the problem.
Yeah.
I try and figure out their strengths.
And we all have them, right?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite shoer package if you've got a mystery lameness, like a horse that's just footy or something like that?
Yes, I do.
And what's that?
I go to a hot bar with some type of packing, impression, or pour in.
Yeah.
My hot bar is my go-to shoe.
Your go-to? They seem to go in and out of favor, don't they?
They do. They do. And, the guy I worked for was a big hot bar fan in South Africa. When I came over here, Bernie was big
Bernie
on it.
Chapman,
and I've always liked them. I feel like I was taught how to fit them correctly.
Right.
I've had a lot of success in different aspects with it.
Yeah. What do you use as your planner or agenda?
I use an iPad calendar.
Do you? Yeah. Favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
Going on vacation.
Yeah, I had stall rest with somebody else's last night.
By second or third day, when we go, my wife and I go every year in the first week of February to the Caribbean, normally Turks and Caicos.
Okay.
It's cheaper to go to Turks than it is to go to Miami or Florida.
Really?
Yes, if you really look into it, it's really cheap. And the reason we go the first week of February is the winter gets long in Kentucky. It gets cold. My wife doesn't like working on the farm in the winter, so we always go then. But also, December and January, I don't do anything but duck hunt. It's our season in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
And she knows we don't go anywhere, and she honors that. And I don't do clinics in that period.
Right. You've made it work. Favorite drink?
Right now, I'd say it's coffee. I quit drinking about 4 years ago. Used to be Crown and Ginger.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it, and it was any type of alcohol that I drank gave me a headache for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
And people said, well, you shouldn't drink as much. Well, I tried 1 or I tried 10. I had the same headache. And they said, well, it's the quality. You're not drinking good beer. I drank cheap beer, drank expensive beer. Cheap whiskey, bad whiskey. Did the same. So I just quit it. All I drink nowadays is coffee and sparkling water.
Okay. Do you work out?
In my mind, I try to work out really hard, but I don't always get to it.
Yep.
I'll be honest. That's what...
And what would you have been if not a farrier?
A veterinarian, probably.
Yeah, sounds like
my dad was a farmer, and he told me he would not let me be a farmer, and veterinarian was my aspiration.
Right.
In my mind as a kid, I wanted to be a professional polo player, but I soon realized there wasn't money.
That wasn't going to pay the bills?
No.
And then the last question, if you were stuck in a shop with somebody for a month, who would you want it to be?
Probably my wife.
You're not the first person to say that?
Yeah. I'm looking at all the pros and cons and things. No, my wife would be my first choice, without a doubt.
Well, there you go. You obviously picked the right one.
I couldn't be happier. I'm just super tickled, and she lets me do these. She never has a worry. We support each other, but we don't always go to each other's events, but we 100% support them. And I also support that she doesn't enjoy being at these because there's not a lot for her to do.
Right.
And she supports the same thing if I don't feel like going to a horse show with her.
Yeah. Right.
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's good to have separate interests.
It is.
Yeah. Be able to do those and reconvene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning to do this.
Thank you for asking me. I really enjoyed it, Brian.
Yeah.
It's good to know you, man.
Yeah. All right. And all the best with Grand Circuit.
I appreciate that. Thank you.